And we're going to be talking about the joys and pains of being there to change the world for the better. And Nico is one of those people. Someone has joined. Hi. And so we're just, gonna chat. I'll start by introducing him. Nico is a young sustainability strategist whose career has taken him from ESG manager to startup founder, and who is now focusing on regeneration. Having gained personal experience of corporate sustainability, he's passionate about addressing our nested crisis with a more regenerative, systemic approach. He's now building communities to bridge talented individuals for real world problems. And he will soon join an NGO in Tanzania, super exciting, to help establish regenerative communities on the ground. Thanks, Nico, for making the time for the chat. I'll just briefly say how we got to know each other, and a group of coaches in Berlin, impact-driven coaches, something. And the founder once posted a request just for a chat with someone in the field of sustainability who was looking to build a course and was doing some research on that. And I also have a little bit of experience there and some background. I was working at Greenpeace, and so I thought it would be interesting to chat. And it was. So Nico also gave me some nice ideas about the project I'm still doing up to this day. So Nico, just if you could briefly about yourself and how you are doing what you're doing today.
Absolutely. Yeah. First of all, thank you for the invitation and the really nice introduction. Super cool. Also cool that you mentioned how we get together somehow with the approach of the fellowship. We mentioned maybe we can talk about this later. To my person, I am actually a civil engineer, and I worked as an intern in Stockholm in 2019, and I saw a huge protest. It was like the Fridays for Future demonstration back then in 2019. And actually, I was not aware about the sustainability problems that much. I really thought more that the governments are solving these problems. But as I got a little bit curious about what these young people are demonstrating for, I got a little bit more into sustainability. And then I started as an ESG manager, as you mentioned, in Vienna for a real estate company. And after 2 years, I decided to found a consultancy in that space, actually. And then we grew, and we even developed software for data collection, especially for mid-sized hotels. After some issues, we pivoted back to consultancy, and now I do run, as mentioned, a sustainability consultancy. And as you also mentioned, I'm now transferring a little bit more to the more holistic approach of our crisis. My personal experience is with corporate sustainability. That's just like one approach to transform companies from inside out. And I think it's to get a broader audience, we need to find language. We need to educate people about the interconnectedness of these crises. And I'm still, I would say, new to the space of regeneration. I did some courses and so on, but I deeply believe that as the nature and our world is regeneration in its pure, we need to think more deeply and more aware about the interconnectedness, and that's what I'm trying to do now. Also with the join of the NGO, where they build regenerative communities somehow.
Okay, so the word interconnectedness, you mentioned it several times. So I'm going to ask about what you mean by interconnectedness. But before, maybe just briefly, what is an ESG manager for people who don't know what this abbreviation?
Yeah, for sure. ESG is kind of corporate sustainability, as I mentioned. It's environment, social governance, and it's a term which is coming from, I would say, financial institutions. Like, how do you rate the sustainability performance of a company. And basically in the beginning it was like CSR, then sustainability, then now it's ESG, and now it's a little bit transforming into impact projects and so on. Companies who really want to change something are more speaking about transforming with a regenerative business case. But there we need to find a huge definition for what is a regenerative business case as well. It's still new, I would say.
Okay, so basically the story that you've shared, it tells us that sustainability or this field, maybe that's now evolving into a regenerative approach, kind of found you, right? And it just got you, let's say, sucked in. And yeah, so what is it, or what did you come there for? What is like what's sustainability, or what was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, the sustainability space, when I started to work in that sense, I was told that this is like the way we can change the world or to have an impact, actually. But what I realized do my work in the company, that it's super like dependent on so much things, like from budget, resources, stakeholders, and so on. And as a sustainability manager or consultant, it's you personally are so intrinsically like detached to the change that it's emotionally super hard for you to find a regulation what it is like from your personal wise and your work related. Regarding your question, what is sustainability? Or corporate sustainability, as mentioned, it's the performance of the sustainability performance, the rating for what the company is affecting the environment.
But what would you say behind the definition is, just in lay terms, in lay people's terms? What does it mean exactly, and how it, or rather maybe how it translates into day-to-day activities of a
I mean,
company, but also of a sustainability manager?
there's this famous graph where you see where's our conventional approach, where is the sustainability approach, and where's the regenerative approach, and basically it's about do less harm. Like if companies want to have a sustainability transformation, they basically do want to do less harm to the environment and the people. And what regenerative is doing actually is changing the approach. You basically look at the potentials you have as a company, how to transform people and the environment. And that's what we need to do. Like, we don't have to reduce our harms. We actually need to increase our positive impact, our potential. And that's what I deeply believe we need to focus a little bit more on, because as everyone is a little bit aware that we need to refoster, regenerate our biodiversity, our oceans, and so on. So that's now the next task, not just to reduce our harms, even to improve our potentials in that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I understand there was something that then you didn't find in the sustainability space, and that's why you have been now kind of transitioning to regenerative space. Mm-hmm.
I would say personally, I got into the regenerative space due I dealt a little bit more with inner development actually, and that's the project I came in contact with you. Due my personal inner work, I would say, I mm, digged a little bit into my like values, mission, vision, and so on. Reflected a lot, and then somehow I saw a deeper connection towards our environment, because basically we as a human we are our environment, and it's not the disconnection between us and them or us and the environment. And basically we are it, and that's when I thought a little bit, or got introduced into the world of regeneration, that we need to think about it more holistically. And so it is a step-by-step process that it was in the beginning, corporate sustainability, then a little bit as a bridge, the inner work, I would say. And now I do want to approach our problems with a more interconnected approach, or systemic
Mm-hmm.
approach.
Okay, um, so can you tell a bit more about what you mean by interconnectedness that you consider very important?
Basically, every little being or a bacteria or a human or animal is somehow connected with each other, if we believe it or not. What our super globalized world is like dependent on each other, as we see now with the expectance of, I don't know, a decision in the US is like affecting us here in Germany, and the same is when we are consuming as we do now, then the people are in Africa affected from this. Like the interconnectedness of the systems is actually the foundation. We need to like recognize that it's really a dependency on each other, and that it's not about, okay, we solve like this issue of climate change and then everything else will flourish or will be good. And it's about really the thought of how environment and social issues are connected to each other. And there are so many studies about how like these wicked problems are interconnected. And we should not approach just one thing or the other. We need to think it like more holistically. And of course, then it seems like super overwhelming, but actually that's not. Actually, if you just have a logic understanding of the problems we have and a fair approach, then it's not that hard. And then it's a step-by-step process. What narrative we want to create, what problem we want to solve, actually, and what stories we want to share.
Yeah. And I totally, by the way, share your the importance that you think interconnectedness has. I think it's central to everything, to how an individual is feeling or going through life, but also how we solve the problem. So we're so much on the same page.
Yeah.
How you came to this realization about interconnectedness during the self-development phase. So maybe there is like a story to that where this is where I felt, oh, if not just in general.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would refer back again to the inner work I did. And basically, if you reflect on what really is important for yourself or for people in general, it's kind of relationships, kind of a safety net, somehow social safety net, some kind of value, definitely fulfillment. And if you speak with others and they reply the same, then there is kind of a same understanding. And I did a little bit of research due to some programs. And there I found more and more about the connectedness of these crises. And I didn't knew that before, actually. I was just aware about, okay, I want to solve mostly the issue of climate change. But of course, that's one of the pressing issues to lower our emissions. But again, it's really about how also other people, societies, areas around the world are viewing our problems. And maybe in I don't know, in New Zealand, there is another issue which is more pressing, maybe the ocean rise or whatever. So there are these tipping points, as a lot of people may know, that these planetary boundaries where we need to have a look on, because it's just the physical borders of our little spaceship Earth here. And if you get a sense about the interconnectedness of these boundaries, you also get a sense of the solution, that it needs to be holistic and systemic.
So how would you feel into this interconnectedness? Well, how did you feel? Because also from my own experience, I think that a lot of people talk about interconnectedness, but then there is something about having an experience of interconnectedness that's like, okay, I cannot unfeel it or I cannot unhave it. Unlike just talking about it. Is it something, this kind of like dilemma? Maybe it wasn't there for you. Anyway, what's your experience?
My experience, I mean, I think it's really the relationship between each humans, where I feel the interconnectedness, it is pure or at its best, because basically it's connection which gave us the potential that we are here right now, where we are in our human civilization. And yeah, to get it in a broader sense, that the environment is as we do, the same. Like basically we also have a relationship to our environment. And if you are outside in nature and just like give it a walk or hike or whatever, you basically can feel it, that you are more relaxed, that you need to have this energy exchange, whatever it is, or whatever you call it. It's not an hocus pocus or something, real measurable thing. And that's, I think, important, that it's science based, and it's not just a woo or something like that.
Yeah. On the other hand, like there are a lot of things that science didn't know 10 years ago and 50 years ago. And then, like, is it fair to say that perhaps we can also assume some things that the science maybe hasn't confirmed yet, but might be there? But I know this is a tricky topic. I know.
What do you mean with that again? I didn't
No,
get
I
it.
mean, there's also this rationality, our rationality, and everything that's involved, that I'm saying it has to be confirmed by science. But
Mm-hmm.
science is constantly evolving also. So I'm just saying maybe we can allow a little bit of just relying on our own experience, or on the just experience of people who were.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah, I mean, as mentioned, I'm still new in the space, and I do my inner work, and I just feel that we need to approach our problems with an holistic, systemic approach. Otherwise, it's just the symptoms we're gonna tweaking and tackling, and then there's another crisis, and the old crisis is a little bit in the back. So that's kind of my approach of actionable and solution orientated versions of our problems here.
Can you share a little bit about those interviews that you have conducted and what you have found out about people who work in this sustainability field?
Yeah, exactly. Like I personally worked there as a manager, and afterwards as a consultant or as a co-founder. I realized the detachment of the intrinsic work you do, and your personal effort you put in your work. And it's super. I interviewed, as mentioned, like around 30 people in that space. There are three core patterns everyone was like giving me some feedback to. It's like, one is frustration, that they have like a really daily struggle in doing their work. Second is the overwhelm you get if you work in that space, because they're always constantly changing regulations. Kind of the news are just overwhelming you with this new predictions or whatever. And the third one is you kind of feel a powerlessness, basically, and because there's so much ongoing, and your little work you do is nothing against the big environmental development in the wrong direction, I would say. And so you feel kind of a little powerless if you've worked in the corporate sustainability. And yeah, then I designed a fellowship about sustainability professionals, which are called Weaving Fellowship back then. And I converted around 50%. They were super interested in joining this first cohort, but due to some resource problems, I decided to not execute the program in that sense, because I didn't have the coaching experience as well. And that's the reason why we met and had an exchange about that. But the core benefit of the fellowship would have been really the to improve the communication skills, because it's basically really, how do we communicate about our issues here in this world. We need to find more positive narratives and stories we need to share in the companies and outside in the personal life, how we want to live. And that's basically what was my approach. And what I realized afterwards, that actually in the whole topic of regeneration, like storytelling is in this core of how we can transform systemic change. We need to create actually these stories. Where do we have these personal shifts, where something changed personally? And how we want to live on this earth 50 years with AI and all of the other super efficient technologies. Definitely, I'm aware, and I'm positive about that this could be an utopia with it together, but we need to create these narratives and the positive stories.
Yeah, yeah. Stories, I guess, is how humans live with each other, or yeah, that's super important. But so now, getting back a little bit to the topic of today, the joys and the pains of wanting to make a change. And so what you shared about those interviews, it sounds like, you know, people usually, lots of people, most of the people come into sustainability field because they want to make a difference, and they come, I guess, with enthusiasm. And then something happened that there is quite a lot of pain. Well, not pain literally, but stress and burnout. What's your experience of that? Maybe personal, but also from the interviews.
And yeah, as mentioned, that's emotional distress somehow because you're so connected with your work that it's not easy. And what I really try to approach is always with an optimistic and positive, solution orientated way, where joy is like at the core. Like I'm really thinking about my work as the work I want to do, because if you want to really solve a problem in a real world problem, then basically you can create the joy around that. And I don't would want to work on a sales automation, for example, because I know that's a thing which is not solving a real problem. Of course, there's some efficiency behind that and whatever, but really, I'm really like on my journaling and whatever. I really try to embrace a little bit of joy all the time in the work I do. And then if there's some progress, then you see these little delights in the day, the conversations you have, the ripple effects you're going to have when you share something on LinkedIn or whatever, because people coming to you and say, okay, you are brave. Nice that you shared that, because I was thinking about it, but I didn't had the confidence to share it. And it is really my experience now. As more I expose myself or express myself in that field, as more people are feedbacking me that this is cool, that you are changing the approach or you're focusing on relationships or whatever. It's and not the super fancy titles. It's more about really the basic human needs I want to solve, and for that we need to approach it more in a systemic way.
And so getting back to those people again in sustainability field, that I know
Mhm.
there's, for example, burnout rate is very high, and then also there is this climate-related burnout. I'm forgetting the name for it. And from your research, this is, I guess you said this is what you found. What would your advice be to people who are in this field and who find themselves having this dilemma, wanting to make a difference, but then feeling that this is costing a lot, or maybe that they're losing passion for it?
Like firstly, your biggest asset is yourself, and if you are burning out, no one problem will be solved. So prioritize your health, I would say, first somehow, and do it with some routines, meditation, or nature experiences, or whatever connection, like just go out with a friend and have a nice coffee and whatever, and then try to figure out what is how is your work valuable, and even it's expanding your mind, that it's not like educating about the broader sense, as I mentioned, like from corporate sustainability, where you really think, okay, my work is not valuable, and then try your best in your space, because it's super necessary and important to work from inside out and from a company. But if you see there is so much resistance, you can also educate yourself about what is the broader sense of the interconnectedness, like the regenerative systemic approach. And then it's more a learning and unlearning journey, as it was for me. So I really empower everyone to first prioritize your mental health in a way, and preventive as well, and then afterwards see what is your value to the world. Where can you give your passion into? And maybe it's not then in the professional context as a sustainability manager or consultant. Maybe it's also a little bit in your personal life, where you educate and talk with your friends about it.
Hmm. Yeah. And I guess nowadays there are also quite a lot of projects where you can be hands on with creating a change. For example, with creating a regenerative forest or garden. Like here in Berlin, this is, well, has been something for me that I've been passionate about this year. And it's so It's just so nice because you're creating and planting something, but then I am also creating something, and I know there are a lot of projects like that here also in Berlin. But now maybe this is a bridge to what you are gonna be doing in the next couple of months and your adventure with the NGO in Tanzania. Could you share a little more about that?
Maybe one last thing to add
Ah,
in how to what suggestion I have for the people working there. Really try to find your community who is passionate about the problem, because I in almost every study or interview, there's some lack of or there's the issue of loneliness somehow. If you're tackling these problems, find your community and find the exchange, which is based on trust, and then it's more energizing, more joyful. So that's maybe an approach. Really try to find your community. And
mhm,
for the NGO, yeah, I decided to kind of immerse myself. It was always kind of a dream to go to Africa somehow. And after I decided I want to develop also myself a little bit, I before I move to another city, I want to go to a different place or whatever. I want to give something back. Me and my partner decided to join a volunteer work, and then we found an NGO in Tanzania, in Arusha, which is actually really about creating regenerative communities on the ground. And the community or the ecosystem is basically in three pillars. Like, one is child education, which is basically schools. Two is woman empowerment, where they reduce the dependency on men. And three is regenerative agriculture, like really that they have basic food for life. And the last 2.5, 3 years, they're really growing. And there's really a super nice approach. Young founders, super ambitious. And what their approach is that volunteers or talents from here come with their own projects, own impact projects, entrepreneurship projects, and then embed that into the ecosystem there, so that the impact can grow from itself. So basically, what we are doing now, we bring in our own project, we integrating it into the ecosystem, and we will leave 2 months after. But the impact and the work we do is so integrated, hopefully, that it's growing afterwards sustainable. And actually, I really like the concept of giving something, giving a handprint, something like that. Like, I'm going there with my project and then embed that. And I do see some report how this will evolve later on. And now I'm thinking about, okay, how we can find language, first of all, for younger people, talents who also want to do that, with a little bit more in a program styled way, I would say. And secondly, how we can design such a fellowship program, whatever it could, you can name it, to attract more people in that. Because I deeply believe if you have something like that, an immersive experience on the ground, you
mm,
see problems from a different angle, and not just from the privileged Western yeah, perspective.
mhm. So, can you share a little bit about the project that you are taking to Tanzania, or if it's not a secret?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, what I mentioned is something like this fellowship, a bridging talent fellowship. I just called it
Ah,
now as a design draft for it. And my area will be impact measurement in the NGO, and my personal project will be the bridging talent program, where I do look now what language we can use, what maybe foundations are interested in hosting such a program, what contexts we need to deal with. But this is now a step-by-step process, and I really like it already yet, and to just get some new knowledge about how we can finance and maybe bridge this knowledge gap as well. Like, because we have so much talented people, and maybe it's a win-win for both, for the talents and the young people here, professionals, and the environment there in Africa, if they do something like that.
and bridging the gap, we did discuss it a little bit before we started the formal chat, right? It's about making it kind of understood by the younger generation or by the people who, let's say, the NGO is looking for. So it's in their language and it explains what value they're gonna get from it. Did I get it right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like finding the language, like finding new approaches, basically. Because currently, I do not see the approach. I think it's really about testing and how can we bridge our talent? How can we bridge the knowledge we have to get a broader perspective, just expand our worldviews and to understand the interconnectedness again. And for me, it's also a huge learning and unlearning process. I mean, in the beginning, I was super overwhelmed about a lot of new words and whatever and concepts. Maybe also that's a little issue because if you're new in such a topic, then you're unfamiliar and so on. And I think there is potential if we find the right language which attracts young people. People are willing to do something good if they see an impact. And from the first interviews I had, they resonated a lot, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people want something fulfilling, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, it was super fun, Nico. Thanks a lot for the chat. And so, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, maybe I started here in Substack recently, also sharing my story because basically I recognize that sharing your story is also an act of weaving, so to say, and trying to connect on a human level, like what are our issues we need to talk about. Yeah, here in Substack, it's Nico Spreng, just Nico Spreng, and I started a Substack called Path Forward, and on LinkedIn it's also Nico Spreng. So if you want to connect or somehow feel free to reach out also to me. Again, also thank you, Julia, for connecting and this super valuable, insightful, nice little chat. I'm super interested also how you're developing and what your approaches are. And thank you for the fun of it.
Yeah, well, yeah. Thanks, Nico, for being here. And the things I'm doing are also related to interconnectedness. So,
Exactly.
and yeah, we'll exchange again at some point. Wishing you a beautiful trip, a wonderful experience, mind shifting, expanding. And
Okay.
best of luck in your future projects and in finding like a path or two different paths. We can change path, right? To creating the change.
That's how we do. We stay connected, and I'm super interested, curious what the next steps will be. But thank you also for the invitation again, and bye bye, and
Yeah.
wonderful
Bye.
wishes to Berlin as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Nico.
Bye bye.
Okay. Bye and bye.